Hello, if you haven't met me yet, my name is Nick, and in this video I'm going to show you exactly how I got to $25,000 a month selling automation services. Let's get into it. First things first, this is just my personal step-by-step process. I have to make this disclaimer because a lot of people sort of take this as gospel. This is not the only way to get there. One thing that I think is really unfortunate is that a lot of these internet gurus make their process out to be the only process. And in reality, what I've come to find, the more money I've made, the more successful I've become, is that there are multiple roads and paths to achieving, financial freedom and whatever you constitute success, not just mine, right? So get what you can out of my video, apply it to your own life, and then, do with that what you will. But hopefully there are going to be some gems in here that'll help. I'm also not going to gatekeep it all. I'm just going to teach you everything that, I personally did. Because personally, I find that when I just tell people exactly what I did and how I did it, they tend to like me a lot more. So diving in, why automation in the first place? Well, this is probably one of the highest leverage industries in 2024 that you can get into. If you guys remember, 5 or 10 years ago, there were all these trends that were just coming out in online business. There was drop shipping and social media marketing agencies and all that jazz. And at the time, these were also quite high leverage. Automation is the current very, very high leverage thing, and it's probably one of the easiest ways to make money, even if you're not extraordinarily technically competent. So that's number one. Basically, it's just a massive leverage multiplier. What's cool is that you get to use automations, the same ones that you sell to other people, to make your business better too. So it's sort of mutually synergistic. The second is that it's a very new and growing industry. It's trending like crazy right now. I just pumped this into Google Trends, and you can see how interest over time in AI automation, which I would say is a more representative term for what we're doing than just automation, is blowing the hell up right now, especially since ChatGPT came out right around November, December, or whatever. Oh, actually, I think it came out in 2022, which would be right around here. And that's really where you see that big spike. So it's a new and growing industry. It's exciting. There's a very low barrier to entry. The tools that you need in order to do this, you don't actually have to be a super crazy programmer or anything like that. Most of the time, it's just no-code tools that are drag and drop. And if you're younger and you've grown up during the internet, or even if you're a little bit older and you understand some programming fundamentals, that makes it very easy to get started. You're just dragging and dropping instead of writing code. And the benefit to that too is that the customers and your clients tend to like drag and drop builders a lot more than they like code, because they can actually do something with it. They can interpret it. The fourth main reason is because everybody needs it in some way, shape, or form. Automation is not going anywhere. It's going to be around for a while, basically until we make the economy obsolete, or at least we make humans obsolete in the economy. Although it's a new and growing industry, it's not going to be one of those short-term trends. Automation is going to be around for a while because it just refers to the process of basically systematizing business. And then the fifth is that it's very sticky. And what I mean by sticky is if you start providing automation services to clients, one of the massive benefits to this industry is that you tend to get in bed with them. You tend to put your fingers in every part of their business, if that makes sense. And essentially, you tend to be very hard to get rid of, especially if you work with people on a monthly basis. And this may sound bad just the way that I'm pitching it, but it's really not. Because you also provide a stupid amount of value to these customers as well by doing so. And so, if you're part of every aspect of somebody's business, the likelihood that they're going to want to, replace you if they see a shiny new object down the street is very low. And so the people that you tend to get on retainers or longer term relationships, they tend to stay with you for a long time, and you can make a ton of money off of them. You can easily make over $50,000 a year per client, and you can have 5 to 10 of them at a time. So some obligatory background information about me. I started a content writing agency called 1 Second Copy right around the time that GPT-3 came out, sort of back in 2020. And, we basically provided content writing services for small to mid-sized businesses, magazine articles, obviously blog posts, journal articles, some ebooks, that sort of thing. And, I learned a lot of no code just building that business. And we peaked at $92K a month, right around the time that ChatGPT came out, actually. And that business was extremely informative because it basically just provided me all of the knowledge and the fundamental and sort of the base that I would later use to sell automation services. And it was also just a great testing ground for make.com. Content writing is a very high throughput or high volume industry. And so, you tend to have a lot of articles, right? And when you have a high volume of records in a project manager or CRM or something, you tend to want to automate them because there's little fixed costs with every single one. So it was a great baseboard that I used to later learn a lot about automation and then launch an automation company. And I started selling automation services in earnest, as a business in May 2023. I was selling them a little bit before, but this is the first time that I was all right, let's systematize the hell out of this. Let's turn this puppy into a business. And then between May to 2023 and then July to 2023, I hit $25,000 a month. And the way that I did it was I just used everything that I'm about to talk about here, basically. I didn't have a roadmap at the time. I didn't have like some big master plan. I sort of just developed it organically as I went along. But looking back, this is what I did. My biggest month so far is 72K in 30 days, and that's net. I mentioned that it's net because it's quite important. Most people on the internet will tell you about the revenue. They're not going to tell you about their profit. So revenue is vanity, profit is sanity. My biggest month so far is 72,000 in profit, and I think that's quite important. And ultimately, the other really important thing is that automation is by far the most consistent, most enjoyable, and probably the most passionate thing that I've ever done in my life. It's fantastically interesting every single day that I get to wake up and work on somebody else's business, and I get to learn the ins and outs of a completely new industry is a massive win in my books. And the fact that they also just happen to pay me a lot of money to do it, that's just the cherry on top. That's just the icing on top of the cake. Anywho, let's get into some core ideas here. What you're going to see over the course of the next, 15, 20 minutes, however long I'm going to be talking about this, are a couple of things, and they're going to crop up again and again and again. And I do a lot of consulting and coaching nowadays with my community, and I do one-on-ones. And there are also issues that I see come up a lot that I just want to get ahead of. The first big issue is that most people spend their time on very low ROI activities that are not directly correlated with revenue. What do I mean by low ROI activities? I mean, this is my website here. One thing that I tended to do quite a lot when I started was I would spend 30 minutes here, an hour there, just touching up how my website looked. I would change the colors of those little borders around the elements here. I'd add my Twitter, and some days I'd add my LinkedIn. And I changed the way that my book intro call button looked, and I changed the social proof and all that shit. I'll be real, that stuff doesn't matter. I could have done absolutely none of that, saved myself 100 hours and spent it on acquiring customers, and I'd be much further ahead now than I would have otherwise. There are so many things, so many potential time sucks in business that other people will try and tell you that are important and that are necessary. But in reality, the number one thing that actually matters, and basically the only thing that matters in any business, not just automation, is acquiring revenue. And so if you can get in the habit of just saying screw it to everything except for acquiring revenue, you will go very far very quickly. And that's one of the main core principles that I want to talk about today. The quickest paths to doing this in our business model in automation are three. There are communities, cold email, and then platform sales. Communities are like groups of people that band together to discuss like a particular niche topic. A lot of the time they're paywalled or gated. So, sometimes you have to spend a little bit of money to get in. They charge you on a monthly or an annual basis or whatever. And communities are awesome because they're a group of people, typically in your target niche, that just talk about the problems that they're facing all freaking day. And if you think about it from your perspective as an automation expert, let's say it's like an agency community, they do like marketing agency stuff. You just have an entire group of people that are like your target audience, and all they're talking about is like, oh man, this business process sucks, and oh man, I'm suffering from this problem, and that sort of thing. It is the perfect place for you to swoop in, solve their problems, and then get rewarded monetarily for it. So you basically have like a captive audience of customers there, which is awesome. The second is cold email. And the reason why cold email is such a high leverage lead generation method for us anyway, is simply because we get to personalize a lot of the outreach with AI. Like basically the fact that you know how to automate stuff using AI and no-code automation tools provides you tremendous leverage here because you can just achieve much higher like levels of personalization, customization, and then ultimately results with cold email than most other people can in different industries that don't know this shit. So that's a big point of leverage there. And then the last is platform sales, which I've received some flack for in the past. But let me just say, as I mentioned earlier, the only real thing that matters here is that you make money as quickly as possible. Worry about everything else later. Just make sure to acquire your first customer sooner rather than later. The best way that I've found to do this is with platform sales like Upwork, Fiverr, TopTal, and a bunch of other ones. You just type in like Upwork or Fiverr alternatives, there'll be dozens. The reason why this is so important is because of a concept called like the buying temperature, like the buying ladder. If I were to just type like ladder, like an image of a ladder here, the way that I think about buying ladder is, this is a bunch of prospects, okay? There are a bunch of prospects on this ladder, and they're prospects at different parts of the ladder. And the prospects that are at the highest end of the ladder, these are people that are very easy to sell. The prospects that are at the bottom of the ladder are very difficult to sell. So basically the way that the buying ladder works is, let's say you're selling automation services. The people at the bottom of the ladder, they don't know what their problem is. They don't know what the solution is, and they don't know that you're the best pick for the solution. The people at the second rung of the ladder, they know what the problem is, but they don't know what the solution is, and they don't know why you're the best pick for the solution. The people on the next step of the ladder, they know what the problem is, they know what the solution is, but they don't know that you're the best pick for the solution. The people next up on the ladder know what the problem is, they know what the solution is, and they know that you're the best pick for them on the ladder. The point that I'm making is basically the more problem aware your customer is, the way easier it is to sell them. And these platforms, Upwork, Fiverr, TopTal, by nature only let you interface, or the vast majority of the customers that you will interface on these platforms are problem aware. So they already understand the problem. They already know the solution, which is that they need to hire somebody. And the only distinguishing factor that they're making is between service providers that provide that solution. So it's a much easier sell. Much easier sell than some people that maybe don't know the problems or don't know the solutions. And they're also very structured, which allows you just to get up and running quickly and make your first buck. So I usually recommend these, and I get some flack for it sometimes because, sometimes you lose a little bit of money for marketing acquisition. Sometimes they're expensive. Sometimes the clients on these platforms are shit. I never cared about that. The only thing I cared about was making money as quickly as possible. And I'd recommend that, a lot of the people that are watching this video are probably suffering from the same problems that I'm outlining here. I'd recommend that you guys do that first. The last thing I want to mention is that you don't actually need as much knowledge as you probably think. The distance between you and like an automation specialist, so to speak, is probably realistically only maybe 50 to 100 hours. It's really not that much. If you know how to operate like a computer, if you, know a couple of keyboard shortcuts, then you stack on 50 to 100 hours of learning, you'll probably be fine. Everything after that, you should be learning by building projects directly for customers. That's the only real thing that matters. Building systems for customers alleviates so much of like the unconscious stuff that, I would never be able to teach you. It just teaches you so much of like the non like verbal knowledge here that it's just super high ROI. And when I say 50 to 100 hours, I just mean that I have a YouTube tutorial up here called Make.com, but for people who want to make real money, that you could take a look at, and it's probably 20 or maybe 30 hours now realistically. Jesus, this playlist got pretty long, but if you just watch that whole tutorial series, you'll know basically everything you need to know about like automation platforms in general, and then you can actually just go out there and start selling. So you have all of the knowledge and the tools that are available to you. You don't actually need much more in order to get out there and start making money. Okay, now that I've finished that lengthy introduction, let's actually get into the roadmap. As I mentioned, this is my personal step-by-step process to get to 25K a month. It's not the only way to get there, it's just what I did. And there are many roads and paths to success. My patented 5-step process. No, the 5 things that I did are, first, I learned the tools of the trade. Then I created some templates using the tools of the trade that I just mentioned earlier. Then I started generating leads for my offer immediately. I tried doing this as quickly as humanly possible. And then once I acquired leads and later clients, I retained them by providing good services, and then I ascended them to larger packages. And these larger packages were ultimately recurring. And then because they were recurring, I was able to make so much money so much faster than most other people. And I'll go into detail about each of these here. I hope it's clear that they're not magic. You do have to put in the work. It's not like you can just, watch a YouTube video of some guy explaining things on a slideshow and then all of your work is going to be done for you. So you do have to do a little bit of work, but it's actually not that much work. In hindsight, there are way worse ways to make money, and there are very few better ways to make money, I would say, than this. So yeah, let me talk a little bit about the specific steps. The first is to learn the tools of the trade. If you don't know anything about automation, it's going to be quite difficult to sell it. It's also going to be quite difficult to fulfill projects. Obviously it's one thing to acquire projects, another thing entirely to fulfill it. And you need to know how to do both in order to scale an automation business. But you don't need to be that competent. I have a YouTube course that you can watch in a couple dozen hours. I was very confident when I said a couple dozen hours. Maybe it's like 3 dozen hours. I don't know. I chose all of these topics specifically because I wanted to give you guys a broad overview of different industries, different problems that these industries are facing, and different potential solutions. And also because I wanted to make a big library of Make.com blueprints, basically, that you guys could just like copy and paste and put into your own business really easily. A lot of them are linked down below in like a Gumroad or something like that. I'm giving them away for free. You don't need to give me any money or whatnot. I love how my productivity tool Rise, anytime I go on my own YouTube to like do work, it's always like, are you distracted? And I'm like, yes, I'm distracted by myself. Anywho, if you follow along and build these scenarios, just as I did, you will have everything that you need. So the learning the tools of the trade, a lot of you guys have probably already watched that course or some of the videos in the course. If you just finish that, you'll know everything that you need to know, trust me. Step 2 is we're going to create templates. Now, templates are simple, repeatable systems that get you 80% of the way there. As I mentioned earlier, I have a bunch of blueprints available on my YouTube videos. These are the sorts of blueprints that you will need to be creating for yourself. Or, you could just copy mine, make a couple of small adjustments to them. But these are the sorts of templates that I'm talking about. There are really only a few, like a preset number of problems that people in your industry are going to be facing. They're probably going to have issues with sales. They're probably going to have issues with marketing. They're probably going to have issues with administration. They're probably going to have issues with hiring, right? There are a few preset problems that they're going to have. And then after you've created templates that solve all of those problems, there's really not too much work left to do. You can just modify these templates a tiny bit per customer. And this is where you get the insane amount of leverage. So I always say they're simple, repeatable systems that give you 80% of the way there. Because by you having 80% of the work done for you, your job is no longer to go from 0 to 100%, it's to go from 80% to 100%. And that's 5 times leverage, just sort of like mathematically. Sometimes my templates get me 98% of the way there. I'll get a client project, and the client project will be to, create like a proposal generator system. And that's one of my systems, right? That, it's quite popular on YouTube. It's one of my most popular videos, actually. But that's one of my very simple, straightforward systems. And then they want all the same platforms that I use. And I literally just copy my blueprint and I paste it into their thing. I make a couple of adjustments for language. And now I have like 50 times leverage on my time, right? Now it's a project that pays me $2,500 or something, which maybe doesn't seem like that much money up front. But if you consider the fact that it took me an hour and a half to do it from start to finish, that starts being very silly. And that's, ultimately the leverage that I'm talking about. Now, I want to talk about another thing here, and that's the idea of productization. If you're unfamiliar with productization, what it basically is it's turning what is traditionally a service, and services are messy, they're complicated, they're difficult to scope, they're really annoying to handle, honestly, into a simple step-by-step process that you are packaging sort of like a product, like a physical thing. All of the steps therein are, laid out in advance. You know exactly what you're going to do in advance. You can delegate them to somebody. There are standard operating procedures for everything. You can do it for usually like a few $100 of internal cost. Productization is like the process of turning the super fuzzy service provider thing into like a very simple step-by-step checklist, essentially. And that's basically what our templates are doing. We're turning previously what is like sort of an ambiguous task, like create me a proposal generation system. It's okay, well, how do I do this? What sort of modules am I going to use? What sort of platforms am I going to use? Into just like a one-click template that is 90% of the way there that just then make some adjustments into. And if you really want to achieve a lot of money in the service space, so you gotta figure out productization. I talk a lot about one of my mentors and people that I look up to quite a bit. He runs a company called Fat Joe, which is an 8-figure SEO agency. And Fat Joe is a perfect example of like productized service. So if you're curious about what that might look like, just check out their website, check out the way that they pitch their products and frame them, and that'll help you get quite a way there. So anyway, I mentioned that automation is high leverage because of the general template. The real benefit to this too is it allows you to deliver a very quick win very fast. And so instead of it being like a project that might take you realistically like a month or something like that of like complicated IT stuff before the customer sees a benefit, you can realistically get the project today, do a few things over the next couple of days, whatever, and then within maybe like a week or so have like a completed system that's very high quality that like starts delivering an ROI super fast. And the benefit to that is you obviously have a much higher perceived client experience. And then when the client experience is really good, then they're more likely to want to work with you again, which makes them ripe for upselling them on a longer term retainer, which is what I did a lot of. So a lot of the time I just have like my first quick win, my templated system, which the hourly rate would be very, very silly. It'd be $500, $1,000, $1,500 an hour. And then, they'd be happy with it. And then I'd say, okay, great. Like, why don't we work together on this project? And then that would allow me to, upsell them to a monthly retainer that, might be $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month. Or obviously you can make a lot more money. Some examples of these one-click templates. My cold email lead generation system is a great example. There are just a few automations that, we'll take, let's say, like a cold email response, dump it into a Slack. Obviously, the actual process of setting up a cold email system is pretty templated at this point. I have a bunch of checklists, for instance, and you can find these everywhere. Automated proposal generator, as I talked about earlier, that's a great example of like a one-click template. One-click CRM template to the client industry. Maybe you're working with lawyers. Lawyers tend to, have projects occur in 4 or 5 steps. You create a CRM template for those 4 or 5 steps, and then you sell that CRM template sort of as your system. AI content generation system, basically anything from any of my YouTube videos in the make.com, but for people who want to make real money course, will suffice here. And basically, I just recommend you set up 5. Don't worry too much about, like, you don't need a 50 or 100 or something. Just set up 5. It might take you an hour and a half. And then once you've set up those 5, you are good and you can start selling. And speaking of starting selling, the next step is to start generating leads for your offer. And listen, if I could have put this first, I absolutely would have. Obviously, you do need to learn how to work with this business model, and you need to set up some templates for the leverage. But honestly, if you could start selling from like day one, you should, and I'd highly recommend it, because nothing will teach you more about how this business model works than actually getting in front of customers, as I mentioned before. So to start generating leads for my offer, these are sort of like the 3 main steps that I'd recommend. The first is to set up cold email infrastructure, which lets you test any offer with just half an hour of work. Cold email infra is incredible because it allows you to basically probably the simplest way to do it is it just like it's like a doorway into Narnia, where you now have the potential to test any offer, test any product, sell any service, and do it all in like an hour. My patented 5-step process is to buy 3 domains. For instance, if my domain is leftclick.ai, I would buy 3 domains, one like goleftclick.com. I usually do .com. I always focus on .com, top level domains for cold email. But I go like goleftclick.com, startleftclick.com, getleftclick.com. Then I create 3 mailboxes for each. A good habit to do with this is to do like first name @ and then first name dot first letter of your last name @ and then first name dot last name @ so that's 3 mailboxes per domain, or 9 domains total. Then connect them to Instantly, Smart Lead, or some other cold email alternative, warm up for 14 to 21 days, and then just start sending. I mean, you do have a 14 to 21 day lead time here, but realistically, the actual work involved here to buy the 3 domains, 5 minutes. Create the 3 mailboxes each, 10 minutes. Connect these, maybe another 15 minutes. And a lot of the time, these platforms just do it for you nowadays. You could pay a little bit of extra money for it. So like this whole process, realistically, it might take like an hour or 2 of work. It's very, very straightforward. But the second that you do that hour of work and then, you finish your warm up, you could test anything that you want in minutes, because it's so fast to source leads and then personalize them using the systems that I've shown you guys before. That is just like one of the highest leverage things that you can do. And you should also always be sending constantly, no matter what, because having emails going out in the background is just like a passive revenue or passive opportunity generator for you. There's basically no downside to it, because the marginal cost of sending an additional email is like $0. It's not like pay-per-click ads where every time somebody clicks in your thing, you'll have to pay $20. It's like you spend money basically once, and then just on the infrastructure, which is, I don't know, maybe like $100 a month or something, very little. And then it just works for you constantly, nonstop in the background, which is incredible. So I do that first, and then I'd also join 3 communities in your target market. What do I mean by communities? Well, as I mentioned earlier, they're like groups of people that band together to talk about specific things. I have a community called makemoneywithmake.com here. That's not the one I wanted to go to. Yeah, I have a community here called makemoneywithmake.com, for instance. And this is just a group of people that get together and talk about automation specific stuff, right? So this community is specifically for people that are like looking to build their automation business. But there are tons of other communities out there that are for people that run legal businesses, for people that run marketing agencies, for people that run graphic design companies, right? What I would do is I would search for the name of the niche, so maybe a lawyer or something, and then the word community, or I'd search up graphic design company community, or whatever type of business, dropshipping community. I do it on Facebook, on School, on LinkedIn, on Discord, on Slack, basically on any platform out there. This isn't an exhaustive list, and there are definitely some more. I then join at least 3 of these communities, and then I just make a daily habit of posting how-tos that address my market need. What do I mean by this? Well, as I mentioned earlier, it's literally a group of people that band together to bitch about their problems. So just learn 5 or 10 of those problems, and then solve 5 or 10 of those problems using your systems. Make a quick post just like, hey guys, I know a lot of people here are struggling from X, Y, and Z, so I thought a little bit about a system that might be able to solve it. Step 1, do this. Step 2, do this. Step 3, do this. If you just do this every single day, and you do this to these 3 communities, you'll have a lot of people that are going to like your comment, assuming that you know how to do it, DM you, and then post a reply. And all you do at that point is you just DM everybody that likes or comments on your post asking you can help, and then use that as your lead generation top of funnel, right? Set up meetings with these people and then sell them on services. So that's sort of step 2. And then step 3 is to create profiles on Upwork, Fiverr, Top Talent, and any other platform that you think is relevant. And this is sort of a simple 3-step process. I mean, I make it out to be quite simple, but obviously you can be as complex or complicated here as you want. Basically, you just research all of the other freelance accounts or businesses on the platform and then dissect them. Try and figure out what like high earners are doing well and low earners are doing bad. And then just make a list of things and make your profile better in every way. Make your photos better, make your copy better, make your pricing better, make your offer better, make your value propositions better, the benefits that you write better. Just make it better. And then a lot of these platforms, like Upwork, for instance, has a daily job application opportunity. I would just apply to 10 to 20 jobs every single day and just make sure that I do that the first thing when I wake up in the morning. If you set up these 3 lead generation things, realistically, it might take you like 5 hours total to get everything done here. And then there'll just be some ongoing daily time cost of like an hour or something, maybe 2 hours. If you do this every single day, it would basically be, and you're not completely incompetent, or I don't know, you just, you know a little bit about the industry, you've watched my videos on automation. It would be virtually impossible for you not to get your first customer within a couple of weeks. I might go as far as to say within a week. And there are many such examples of this in my community. The second that people have these 3 lead generation methods set up, their top of funnel gets so huge, so ridiculously packed that they're having at least a meeting a day. And it becomes the highest ROI part of their day. So, this is really the juice here. Start generating the leads for your offer. And this really applies not just for automation businesses, but for most service or agency-based businesses. So maybe if you are a graphic designer just watching this for shits and giggles, or because you think that I have a nice, an extremely rugged, handsome jawline, then this is the same process that you can apply on your end in order to achieve what you want to achieve. The last step here is to retain and ascend your clients. And this is sort of like, retaining and ascending. Like, what exactly does that mean? Retaining just means when you get a project from a client that you didn't necessarily have to pay to acquire anymore. So if you spend a little bit of money, let's say on your cold email system for the very first client, and then you acquired that client, you technically paid a little bit of, like you paid money for that. If you paid like $200 and you paid, 2 hours of your time to get that client, you could figure out like a monetary cost. And that cost there is the cost per acquisition. To retain a client just means to get another project from that client without having to pay additional cost per acquisition. And you can imagine how this is basically like where all of the leverage in this business model is. If you retain a client, you're no longer paying that one-time cost of like the Upwork connects or the cold email time and energy or the money or the time you're spending messaging people in communities. You basically pay that money once and then they just come back to you for more, right? And that's very valuable. Ascending your clients just means when you start somebody on a lower package and then you increase their commitment with you and move them to a higher package. And it's similar to retention, except ascension, in addition to getting another project for them, you actually increase the price that they're paying you for. And usually, concomitantly, the responsibility is in your end. So retention and ascension are very, very important. And understanding these will help you make a ton of money. The reason why is because the vast majority of actual if you think about gross revenue in this industry is not in one-time projects, it's in recurring relationships. I have tons of examples of quite lucrative clients that started with a 1K project, but then when I counted up how much money they paid me over the course of the year because I transitioned them to a recurring relationship, it was over $50,000. So to start with a 1K foot in the door thing and then ultimately make over $50,000 on a client is pretty sick, right? I even remember this one guy from Upwork where I think his project was less than maybe $500 or something like that. And that guy ended up paying me over $4,000 per month, every month for quite a while. $500 to $4,000, that's a ton of money, right? If you think about my margins on a $500 project, maybe if it cost me $100 to acquire, I spent 20% on the first acquisition, but then 100, and let's just say I made $20,000 off them. That's less than 0.05%, which is ridiculous. So the margins on your marketing just become stupid if you get people in recurring. I mentioned here that if you want to achieve that goal of $25,000 a month, you really don't need that much. You just need a few. 5 clients at $50,000 per year, plus $50,000 from one-time projects, equates to $25,000 a month annualized, which is super easy to do. Some months you'll probably do a little more. Maybe one month you'll have a 35K month, and then the other month you might have a 15K month. It just depends on how consistent these clients are with you, obviously. But to actually achieve the $25,000 a month annualized, not very difficult at all. The work that you're doing for these clients on a recurring or retainer relationship, it's basically up to you. The way that a lot of people will pitch this to start, and the way that I pitched mine to start, was I just pitched it as an alternative to working with me on an hourly basis. I had some hourly basis of $110 an hour or something. And I said, hey, you want to work long term? If you do, I'll give you 20 hours at $90 an hour instead. And so in that way, I was able to lock in a much higher quote unquote package price. But I was able to do it by also providing them an incentive to want to work with me, which was a discount. What I'll find in this industry is very few people actually count the hours, very few people care as long as you're delivering value. So do with that what you will. I've since transitioned to a model that doesn't really require hours at all, where I basically just very transparent about the fact that like, hey guys, this is a very high leverage industry. And the thing that matters to me isn't how much time I spend working on a project, but how much value I provide to you at the end of it all. It's like that old plumber analogy where a woman has some big leak and then a plumber comes over, he makes one knock for 5 seconds and then says that'll be $500 and the project is completed. And the woman's like, how the hell, why would I pay you $500 for 5 minutes or 5 seconds? And then he says, well, you're not paying me for this time that I'm spending right now. You're paying me for all the time and energy that I spent learning how to do that knock, which I've done over the course of the last 5 years. The last thing I'll mention there is that, it's very high retention because it's very sticky. You get your fingers in basically every part of the pot once you run every aspect of a person's business. When you run their hiring, when you run their sales, when you run their lead generation, when all the systems depend on you. Most business owners would be stupid to say, that new guy over there that, he charges me $10 an hour less, maybe I'll work with him instead. And this is a big problem in the service industry. People are always, pining for the best deal. In automation, at least from my experience, you don't really have that because people aren't really willing to deal with the downside of letting you go in order to acquire somebody else that might be a little bit marginally cheaper. This also gives you a ton of leverage. If we were purely evil here, you're running basically every aspect of somebody's business means that you have a lot of leverage. You get increased prices whenever you want. There's very little that they could do with it. I don't really encourage you to be evil or super Machiavellian like that because this will eventually bite you in the ass and ruin your reputation. And I always care more about like the long-term money than the short-term money. But some people are going to see that as a benefit, so I figured I might as well point that out. Okay, the second last thing that I'm going to mention is you can actually do all of what I've mentioned today yourself, or with a very small team. So I managed the $25,000 a month with just one virtual assistant. It was just a bunch of like silly little minor tasks. They weren't extraordinarily utilized either. It's not like I was intelligent about the work that I was assigning to them or anything like that. And then, as I mentioned, my best month was over $70,000 net, which was just very stupid. There's also a very high margin industry if you do things, most of the stuff yourself, obviously, because of the leverage. I routinely get margins of over 90% on this work. Granted, I'm still doing it myself, right? But because it's so high leverage, I really don't mind putting in an hour or two every day in order to like make sure these projects are taken care of. If I get to make $70,000, I'm obviously pretty happy with that. My next goal is to scale from the $70,000. I would eventually like to make about $2 million a year net profit. I don't know if I'll exactly be able to do that using this business model because you do eventually cap in terms of what you are capable of doing yourself. But that's a conversation for another day. Considering making videos on how to scale past $25,000 a month. So if you're interested in that, just drop a comment down below and let me know. The very last thing that I'm going to say here is, if you are here and you've made it to the end of this 35-ish minute video or so, start now. Don't wait. If you want to do this, know that this isn't like a big ask. You could actually do all of this stuff probably within a few hours. If you already know automation, then you don't even need to do that first step, which is to learn the tools of the trade. And additionally, if you're smart about how you approach this stuff, you can save so much time. Like I took 3 months to get to $25,000 a month. You don't have to take 3 months. You could realistically do this in 1 month if you followed this roadmap and you were very smart about it. You can start selling automations literally tomorrow if you think about it. I mean, how long does it take to, join some communities, make some posts and DM some people? If you're constantly by your computer and if you're active and if you're committed to it, if you put in like 8, 10, 12-hour days for the first bit, you could actually start making money like in a couple of days. It's really not that big of a deal. Obviously, there are some minor, more logistical things that I've brushed over here, like setting up a payment processor, setting up maybe like a business website, sort of like your business card online, stuff like that. But the reason why I didn't mention it, because this stuff's like super low leverage, it's not super important. What's more important is that you just get up and running, talking to customers, and you can worry about all that shit after. If somebody says yes to you, well, then you can worry about the payment processor, right? And on that note, I just want to talk about one last concept, which is the figure it out once you've got it concept. I heard this first from Grant Cardone, who now I don't actually find super valuable, but when I was, first getting started in business, I thought he was the bee's knees. And he had this great quote, and I forget what it was, but it was basically like, figure it out once you get it. Don't worry about it all until you actually get it. So he was talking about some examples where he was like, he was being flown all over the world for some TV interview or something like that, maybe some TV show. And then he would sell the person on the idea of this TV show before he had any of the stuff dealt with for the TV show. And the second that he got it, the fact that he got it was motivation enough to go and actually finish it. What I mean by that is like he would sell this big TV package or whatever he was doing at the time. And then when the person was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. Let's shake hands on it and then let's sign the paperwork and I'll send you the money. That to him was like, oh shit, now I'm locked in. Now I have to figure it out. I have no choice. And that sort of mindset has stayed with me for quite a while. Even if you're not 100% on any of this stuff, if you're not an automation professional, Lord knows if you sold somebody in a project and they said yes to you and you have their money in your pocket, you're going to find a way to figure it out because you have to. If you're conscientious, you're intelligent, if you're ambitious, like most of the people that are watching this video that are somehow on YouTube, instead of watching cat pics, they're watching a video on how some guy got to $25,000 a month. So obviously you're pre-selecting for conscientiousness. If you're that kind of person, you're not just going to let something like that slide, right? You're going to provide like work ethic in direct relation. Thank you, thumbs up. To the responsibility that you've taken on. And by getting somebody's money, you've taken on a lot of responsibility. So yeah, that's just to figure it out once you got a concept. The last thing I'll say is good luck. I'm really excited to hear how things go. If anybody here was on the fence about automation or maybe starting this sort of business model, saw this video and said, shit, this is what I'm going to do from now on, I'd be really, really curious to hear how it goes. If you could provide me some updates down below, leave a comment on what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, what you think about this video more generally. I'd absolutely love to see it. Otherwise, if you guys could just please do that fun YouTube stuff, like, subscribe, and if you guys have any questions, just drop it down below and I'll be more than happy to answer. Thanks so much for taking the time. Looking forward to talking to you guys again. Bye-bye.